Football has never been more successful. The 2026 FIFA World Cup is the biggest in history. The Champions League has expanded. The Club World Cup is a thing now. And broadcasters, sponsors and governing bodies all want one thing: more football. But what if football has reached a point where more isn't necessarily better? What if the sport's biggest stars are being pushed beyond their limits? And what if that pressure is already changing the way football is being played? Because when we talk about player fatigue, we're not just talking about tired legs. We're talking about player preservation, declining intensity and cluster injuries. And we're talking about a future where the world's best teams may be forced to play increasingly conservative football simply to survive the schedule. This is the hidden player fatigue crisis. Football's calendar is exploding. Football's schedule has changed dramatically over the last few years. The Champions League expanded from 32 to 36 teams and replaced the traditional group stage with a league phase where every club now plays 8 different opponents. The competition also added an additional knockout playoff round for teams who failed to qualify in the first 8 positions during the league phase. UEFA openly promoted the format as a way to create more high-profile matches and more meaningful games throughout the season, and also provide a platform to include more lesser or smaller teams from across Europe based on their merit. That sounds great for fans. But it also means more matches, more travel and recovery sessions, and less rest. At the same time, FIFA introduced an expanded Club World Cup. And then came the 48-team World Cup, increasing the total number of matches from 64 to 104. That's a 62% increase. 62. Think about that for a second. The biggest tournament in football now contains 40 additional matches compared to previous editions. 40, and every one of those matches requires players to sprint, recover, travel and perform at the highest possible level. The calendar keeps growing, and the players don't have any respite. The warning signs are already here. The Global Players Union has repeatedly warned that football's match calendar is becoming unsustainable. Its workload monitoring reports have highlighted players competing with insufficient off-seasons, shortened pre-seasons and increasingly congested schedules. Their concern isn't just injuries, it's performance. Because fatigue doesn't always appear as a torn muscle or a damaged ligament. Sometimes it appears in more subtle ways. Slower reactions, reduced pressing intensity, lower sprint output, poorer decision-making and mental burnout. Let's take an example of Declan Rice. He's played a total of 5,629 minutes across all competitions last season. On an average, he's played 85.29 minutes played per game. That's significantly more than the league average of 77.2 minutes played per game. The Professional Footballers Association recently warned that some players could arrive at major tournaments having already played close to 70 matches during a single season. As per one of their studies, a player spends up to 249 days in a year either playing or training for football matches. That's about 78% of the total time, meaning only 22% is spent on rest and recovery in a year. Even within that 22%, a player spends 68% of the time recovering between matches. Basically, a player spends only 7% of the year taking a complete break from football, and even that is shrinking due to the expanded schedule of Champions League and FIFA World Cup. The addition of FIFA Club World Cup makes it even worse. We also have to discuss the impact of the expanded schedule on young and emerging players. Let's take the example of Lamine Yamal. He's played significantly more minutes before turning 18 as compared to promising talents a decade or even 5 years ago. Worryingly for young players, the trend indicates only an increase in minutes played, which is concerning for their welfare in the long run. These numbers suggest a concerning trend for all parties involved. At some point, fatigue becomes unavoidable, and that's where football itself begins to change. The death of chaotic football. One of the most fascinating consequences of player fatigue isn't happening in the treatment room. It's happening on the pitch. Have you noticed how many elite teams now stop attacking aggressively once they score a goal or two? A decade ago, teams would often continue pushing forward. Today, many top sides are doing the opposite. They score first, then they control. They score a second goal and then they manage the game. Arsenal's Premier League title winning campaign was a perfect example. Rather than turning every match into a high-speed shootout, Arsenal frequently focused on controlling possession, limiting transitions and protecting leads. Manchester City have mastered this approach under Pep Guardiola. Real Madrid often do the same in Europe. The objective is no longer simply to win. The objective is to win efficiently. And we saw a similar pattern during the World Cup. When the United States took a 2-goal lead against Australia, the intensity dropped noticeably. Instead of relentlessly chasing more goals, the focus shifted towards game management. The second half was a little dull. This isn't necessarily negative football. It's logical football. Modern football isn't becoming more cautious by accident. It's adapting to harsh reality it is being subjected to. The hydration break era. Nothing highlights football's growing physical demands more than hydration breaks. At the 2026 FIFA World Cup, hydration breaks have become a major point of discussion. According to recent analysis, several matches have already been played in conditions exceeding the heat thresholds that Footballers Association considers dangerous for elite competition. As a result, hydration breaks have become an increasingly visible part of the tournament. Supporters say they are essential. Critics argue they disrupt the rhythm of the game. You can check out a detailed analysis of the hydration breaks and its impact in the link on the top right-hand corner. The future of football. Football faces a dilemma. Broadcasters, sponsors, tournament organizers and even fans want more games. But players need rest. The danger isn't simply that players get injured more often. The danger is that football itself evolves into something different. More squad rotation, tactical conservatism, game management and more energy preservation. Less chaos, intensity and spontaneity. Things that make the sport entertaining and exciting to watch. Ironically, football may become less entertaining because there is simply too much football. And the evidence is increasingly visible every single weekend. The game is becoming a marathon rather than a sprint. Football has always evolved. But today, the biggest challenge facing the sport isn't tactical. It's physical. Both the Champions League and the World Cup has expanded dramatically in the past 12 months. And every expansion brings more demands on the players who make the sport possible. The question is no longer whether player fatigue is changing football. The question is whether football can continue expanding without fundamentally changing the sport we all love. Let us know in the comments. Has modern football become too demanding for today's players? Or is this simply the unavoidable cost of football's global growth? Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.